Hello and welcome. I'm glad you could join us. I'm Dr. Neal Barnard.
I'm Susan Levin.
And we are going to, for the next 45 minutes or so, be conducting an online support program of education and support for those of you who are interested in changing your diet and perhaps doing a little bit better. If diabetes is a concern for you, you've come to the right place. But if you just want general healthy information about diet, I think you'll find what we're talking about today very exciting. Here's what we have lined up today. I'm going to give a presentation for about 10 minutes that I think will surprise you. We're going to talk about what may be the actual fundamental cause of type 2 diabetes. That's the adult onset form of the disease that is so prevalent nowadays. And then we're going to have a cooking demonstration from Dulcie Ward. And Susan, what are we preparing today?
Okay, Dulcie is making a lot of really tasty dishes. She's making a spicy black bean and tomato dish. She's making a curry lentil soup, and then she's going to be doing garlicky green beans.
Great, super. Now, if you want to follow along, I'm going to show a short PowerPoint presentation. And we're going to do things a little bit different today from the way we did them last week. We're continuing to refine our technology here. And for today, let me ask you to go online if you haven't already, and you can download the Power presentation and walk through it with me. Let me give you the address. It's http:// and then it's diabetes.pcrm.org. I'm going to repeat that. In fact, I'll repeat it a couple of times as the show goes on. And again, http:// and it's diabetes.pcrm.org. There's no www in there. That's all it is. http://diabetes.pcrm.org. When you get there, here's what you're going to see. You'll see some programs that you can download. The one we're going to start with is me. It'll say my name, Dr. Neal Barnard, and it's called A New Way of Eating. We're going to start there. Just go ahead and download that now if you would. And then, if you'd like, when Dulcie presents, you can go to her presentation, which will give you all the recipes that you can follow along with as well. As a matter of fact, you can download the presentation that she's giving today. And you'll see it has her name, Dulcie Ward, and she has a few presentations that are there. The one you want has today's date. And it'll say Nutritionist Dulcie Ward PowerPoint. Very easy, okay? So again, that website, http, I'll get it right.
I know.
http:// then it's diabetes.pcrm.org. Okay? How about we go ahead and get started? First of all, why don't we review, those of you who were with us last time, I have a memory test for you. What are the 3 parts of a new way of eating for diabetes? Well, okay, first being vegan. And when I say vegan, that means no animal products. Why is that good? Because there's then no animal fat, no cholesterol, and lots of fiber in the diet. The second thing is that it should be low in fats and oils. And that means keeping really all the oils very, very low. Third, low glycemic index. Do you remember that? That means we're avoiding sugar, we're avoiding white breads, even wheat breads, but we're going very much into beans, whole grains. We're going to, as well as have green leafy vegetables and that sort of thing. So you remember. Now, if you are following along with me, go to the slide that says a look inside the cells. In type 2 diabetes, the problem appears to be in the muscle cells. The cells are resisting insulin's action, and this appears to be caused by tiny bits of fat inside the cells. Now, if any of you are late catching up with us, go to http://diabetes.pcrm.org. And as you go through the PowerPoint, you're going to see a slide that has a cell on it. It's a black and white diagram of a cell that shows insulin trying to do its thing with the cell. Take a look at that diagram if you have it. If not, I'm just going to describe it to you. Surprising as it may sound, it looks as if the problem in type 2 diabetes is in muscle cells in particular. Here's what's happening. Normally, the pancreas makes insulin. The insulin goes in the bloodstream and it reaches the cell. And it attaches to receptors on the cellular surface, rather like a key arriving at a lock and turning it so that you can open a door. In this case, insulin arrives at the cell, it enters into the receptor, and it's trying to open up the cell membrane to let glucose come inside so that glucose can go from the blood into the cell. You want to get it out of your blood, and you want to get it into the cell where it can power the muscle cells and power your activity. That seems to be the problem. Insulin is made okay in type 2 diabetes, at least initially. It gets to the cells okay for the most part. It arrives at the receptor, but it's unable to open up those little holes to allow the glucose to go inside. That's what we call insulin resistance. So why is that happening? If you can picture a lock where you would put a key into the lock and open the door, but somebody has put bits of gum in the lock or glue in the lock. It's not working very well anymore. Well, something analogous to this happens in the cells. The cells get filled not with gum, but they're filled with fat. Fat from the foods that we eat, fat that might be made in the body. It gets inside the cells, and this seems to disturb insulin's ability to open up the little holes to let glucose inside. Okay? So we want to clean the fat out of the cells. Now that's important because most of us in diabetes for years have been looking at what might be the wrong thing. We've been focusing only on the glucose and foods that produce glucose, saying don't eat that, don't eat carbohydrates, don't eat white bread, or don't eat pasta, things that might produce glucose. Now it is sensible to avoid some of these things that cause glucose to produce too fast. But what might be more important is helping your body to clean the fat out of the cell. If we're doing that, then what might be happening is we're allowing the body to recover from the basic process that causes type 2 diabetes. Now at this point you're probably saying, okay, I'm with you. We've got too much fat in the cell, so the insulin can't work its machinery to open up those little holes. Why did that fat build up? How did that happen? Well, it appears that the burners for fat aren't working right. You have inside your body little organelles called mitochondria, and they are supposed to burn that fat up, to metabolize that fat, if you will. And for perhaps genetic reasons, some people don't have as many mitochondria or as active of mitochondria as other people. That allows the fat to build up. So let's say that's you, and you've got diabetes running in your family. The answer is to be on a diet that helps clean up that fat. Okay, let's go forward. What's this fat called? It's a bit of a mouthful, it's called intramyocellular lipid. Intra means inside, myo means muscle, cellular means cellular, and lipid means fat. So intramyocellular lipid means fat inside the muscle cell. Let me share with you a study that was done at Yale University in 2004. And if you're following with me on the PowerPoint, you can just go ahead to that slide. This study brought in participants. Everybody was young, everybody was thin, nobody had diabetes. The test that we used to measure diabetes control, called A1C, was very low in these individuals. Well, when they tested them, they found that some of them were insulin resistant. The way you find that out is with a glucose tolerance test. Did you ever have this thankless test? You drink 75 grams of glucose and then your blood sugar is tested over the next couple of hours. Well, some of these individuals were insulin resistant, meaning they were headed for diabetes, and it turned out that those ones who were insulin resistant had 80% more fat built up in their muscle cells compared to the other people. What does this mean? They were thin, they were young, they didn't have diabetes, but it certainly did look like they were headed for diabetes because of the fat building up in their muscle cells. Okay, what this means is we can detect the problems that are going to lead to diabetes years, perhaps decades, before the diabetes is manifest. All right, will diet affect any of this? Let's go to another study. At Pennington Biomedical Research Center in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, they brought in 10 male volunteers. They were young, average age 23. They were medium in weight, average weight 174. And what they did is they did the opposite of what I hope you're doing. They fed them a high-fat diet for about 3 days. And what they found is that the genes for mitochondrial activity were largely inactivated. What does that mean? That means that they were eating fat, and their body disabled the mitochondria that would burn up that fat. It was as if their body was actually trying to store the fat. Now, in a way, that makes sense, doesn't it? Throughout much of our sojourn on Earth, fatty foods haven't been very available, and if you found them, you might want to store that fat in case you needed it. Fat in muscle cells allows you to have energy later on in the event, let's say, you're starving or you're engaged in very serious athletic activity for a long period of time. Well, nowadays we have fat all over the place. In many of the foods we eat, every restaurant, every grocery store is filled with fatty foods, as are our shelves and our refrigerators too often. and that fat is storing in our muscle cells. Okay, so what if I do something so that fat no longer gets into my body? Well, here's a study that was done at Catholic University in Rome, Italy, and frankly, I hope that you don't volunteer for this experiment. They had 8 volunteers, and they had basically a gastric bypass procedure, and I've got a diagram for this in the PowerPoint that I'd like you to look at. In gastric bypass, what you do is you actually clip off part of the stomach, and you disconnect the first part of the intestinal tract, and you bring the lower part of the intestinal tract up to the stomach and attach it. What that does is it disconnects the part of the intestine that absorbs fat. So if the first part of your intestinal tract is no longer absorbed, well, the first 40 centimeters of your intestine is where the fat is absorbed. So you have a massive fat malabsorption. That means that these people might be eating butter or chicken or whatever, but all of that grease doesn't get into their body. It all goes through the intestinal tract and out. Now, again, I'm not recommending this as a way to go about it, but what happened? What they found is that their intramyocellular lipid, the fat in their muscle cells, dropped 87%. So what this shows us is that indeed, if you take the fat out of the system, the cells clean up. Now, there are other ways of doing it. They tried another diet where they used just a low-calorie diet, 1,200 calories. It wasn't very powerful, but it did reduce intramyocellular lipid. It did reduce the fat from their cells a little bit, about 9%. So the goal is to perfect the diet and to use exercise to accentuate it. So, one more study. At Imperial College School of Medicine in London, they brought in 24 vegans, people who are eating a pure vegetarian diet, no animal fat at all. And they had a matched control group. What I mean is other people who were not vegan, but they were matched for age. They were similar in age. They were similar in weight. Okay, so we've got a group of vegans, we've got a group of people who aren't vegan, who are similar age, similar in weight. What did they find? Well, these people were in their mid-30s. They weighed about 150 pounds on average, and their cholesterol levels, though, were much lower in the vegans, which wouldn't surprise you. But what was particularly important was in this group, the intramyocellular lipid, the fat in the muscle cells, was significantly lower. It was about 30% lower in the vegans compared to the other people. Okay? So, let's quickly review our diet. Again, the goal here is to be able to clean the fat out of these muscle cells. This is the diet, a vegan diet, meaning no animal products. It helps boost weight loss. It appears to help reduce the amount of fat inside the muscle cells. It improves your insulin sensitivity, which is terrific. It can also cut cholesterol. It helps control blood pressure, and it helps protect your kidneys because there's no animal protein in it. 3 keys. It's vegan. It's low in oil and other forms of fat, and it's low glycemic index. By the way, I forgot to mention, if people have a question as this is going on, can they ask? Can people ask questions?
Yes. And can I go ahead and tell them?
Yeah, please do.
You can instant message me a question, and we can address it. I'll forward it to Dr. Barnard. By doing instant message, whether you have Yahoo Messenger, if you have AOL instant messaging, or if you have Windows Live Messenger, you can send it at diabetes PCRM. I'm sorry, reverse that. PCRM diabetes. Any of those forms of instant messaging, PCRM diabetes. Just type that in, and I will get your questions on my computer.
Let me make sure I got it. Okay. So if I've got AOL, or what else?
Or Yahoo, or Windows Messenger.
Okay, and they can instant message?
Yes, instant message me at PCRM Diabetes.
PCRM Diabetes, that's it. And that goes to you?
Yes.
All right, and if you find a question?
I will let you know.
We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Okay, all right, let's go back to our presentation. So, again, we want to clean up what's in the cells, and how to do that. Do we go from beef to chicken? No, because the leanest beef is about 29% fat. The leanest chicken is not a lot lower. It's about 23%. 23% fat as a percentage of calories. Fish vary. Some are lower, some are higher, some are a lot higher. Chinook salmon, for example, is about 52% fat. Broccoli is only 8% fat. Beans are 4% fat. Rice is 1 to 5, depending on the type. Sweet potatoes, yams, about 1% fat. Next, keeping oils low. And this is really important. Fats are fattening. All oils have about 9 calories per gram. Carbohydrate, whether it's in bread or yams or beans, that carbohydrate, that starch, has only 4 calories in every gram of carbohydrate, okay? And most importantly, all fats and oils are mixtures. So people say, well, fish has good fat in it, doesn't it? It does have some good fat. It also has a lot of bad fat. About 15 to 30% of fish fat is in the saturated form. That's the kind that raises your cholesterol and seems to be associated with insulin resistance. Okay? All right. Now, there are a few plant foods that are fatty. Fried foods, for example, potato chips, French fries, also nuts and seeds, and things that we might turn them into, like peanut butter. Avocados. This is one of nature's dirty tricks, that the very delicious food, avocados, are very high in fat, so be careful about them. Same with olives. Certain dressings are high fat, go for the low fat ones. And some of the meat and dairy substitutes are pretty fatty too. I'm talking about, say, a vegetarian hot dog where they haven't reduced the fat in it. Now, most of them, many of them now, maybe most of them, are non-fat or very low in fat, but do read the labels. Okay, you can also cook without oil. And this is a good trick to learn. If you've got one of these recipes that says, okay, saute your onions and garlic in a little bit of oil, you can do the same thing in water, or you can do it in wine or something like that.